Hoo-yah!
Howdy there, guys. Today we're going to talk about Java setters and getters. Basically, by the end of this, I'm hoping that you will understand when and where and why to use setters and getters. So let's get right into it. So ultimately, I want to start by just saying why. I always think it's very important understanding why something should be used in programming. Ultimately, if you don't understand what benefit it has, I don't think you're going to find a reason to go out of the way to use them. And then I'm going to go through implementing them, setters and getters. So this should be pretty easy. So let's go to the next slide. So let's imagine you have data you want other classes to be able to retrieve. And remember, classes are different objects or interfaces to other things that may need something that you're currently building. So you want them to be able to retrieve something, but never be able to edit them. Remember, we had the protected, private, and public variables. Public gave access to everyone, both editing and writing, or editing and getting, so you can change the value and retrieve the value. Protected only allows it if you're in the same package or if you're in the same class hierarchy. And then private, basically you can only access it if you're in that exact class. So getters actually solves that. You can create a getter and allow public access to that getter, yet still have a private variable. Now imagine you also have data that you want to verify, right? So you've got data that needs to change from outside of your current class, but it has to be within a certain range. I really like setters for this because it allows you to do some data validation to make sure that you're not going to end up crashing or something weird happening. And that's the best example I can give you for why setters is important. So first off, how does it work? Declare almost every variable as private. And I do say almost because I do think there's some cases for protected because your inherited classes may still need access to that. So I personally would say in most cases, especially in beginner level Java, most of your variables should always be private, if not all of them. And then you create the accessors. So you create the setters and getters for the variables as they're needed. So who needs to have access to them? Is it outside of the scope of this class? And then you start to really think about how your program is going to be formulated because you want to limit that access. So it makes you architect your software a little bit different. And then who also needs to be able to set them as well. Because that's where things can actually start going wrong. Because if you've got a variable that's public and you don't know because the program's grown to really massive, things can start modifying that and you've completely forgot that was even in there. So now you have a place to set a breakpoint and then start digging in. So let's do some basic setters here. I've got a media class with some private variables, constructor, which is the public media, and then I set a very basic setting or a setter for title. So it's called public void set title. All I do is I take a single parameter string new title, and then I assign the private variable title equal to the new title. Super simple. Just make sure that whatever data you have coming in, I would say do not name it the same name. We can cover why later on, but just say new title is a pretty good name for this case because it's going to be put into the title variable. So let's talk about a little bit of validation. Let's imagine we've got some restriction where the title has to be X number of characters long, otherwise it can't be stored in the database because, whatever reason. So let's do a quick validation. We say if new title.length is greater than 3, we set it. Otherwise, we log something out. Maybe we throw an exception. Maybe we do something completely different in that situation. But now we can actually catch the data going into that data and make sure it's valid. This is a great example because it's very simple to understand the concept behind it. So setter, just a public function, typically named public void because you want access to it from anywhere. Set, and then the variable name. So in this case, set title, where title is now capitalized. and then the one parameter string type, or whatever type that variable happens to be. So what does a getter look like? In this same example, I use title. In this case, it's going to be public with a return type of string, because title is a string, and a get with the variable name, and title happens to be the variable name, so capitalize the T there, and then return title. So now we've given access to title to be accessed not only from a setting capabilities, but also from a getting capability in that same media class. This is an important question that I get asked quite a bit. Yes, you can have one without the other. So you can have just a setter, or you can have just a getter. You can have both of them, a setter and a getter, or you can have none. So the way that that's set up is completely up to you. So here's a couple quick tasks that I think will help you understand better what setters and getters are more powerful, or why they're powerful. So I want you to start by creating a new class called car. And then you're going to add 3 new private variables. One of them is going to be your fuel percent, which will be a floating point. So the way I would treat that is 0.0 to 100.0. That's the range that I would use. You have another one that's Boolean, is running. Another one that's floating point, current mileage, because you can be at 1,000.15 miles, for example, and floating point makes a lot of sense for that. I want you to create a setter for all 3 of those variables. And then I want you to add some validation to the fuel percent so that it makes sure that when you pump gas in the car, whatever mechanical process, whatever electronic calculation is happening there, that when it goes to call into your data, it validates that it's in the range of 0.0 to 100.0. Remember, you have to cover those boundaries because your tank could be completely empty and your tank could be completely full. So that's just make sure that whatever number is getting set is within the range of 0.0 and 100.0. Then I want you to add validation to the current mileage, because you should never be able to roll back your mileage. So when a new number comes in, make sure it's larger than the last number. And ultimately, that is 2 good examples that I could come up with for why validation would be important. Now the second task. So I want you to create a new class called camera. This would almost be like you actually have a camera that you're going to take photos with. And I want you to add the 3 private variables. So the number of pictures taken, you can initialize that to 0 as you create it. These are private, remember. You're going to have one that's the battery percentage remaining. You're going to have one that's a Boolean if the flash is on. I want you to create a function with the void return type that is called take photo. So imagine that's when the button's pushed, right? Click, click, click. That take photo would be called every time. I want you to then increment pictures taken by 1. So for example, if pictures taken starts at 0, because you've initialized it, after calling take photos 1 time, pictures taken should be equal to 1. Now create a getter that returns the value of pictures taken, and then I want you to create setters and getters for the other 2 variables. Pretty cool. So notice that I didn't actually have a setter for pictures taken here. You are modifying pictures taken inside the functionality of the class, and no one else can access that. So you can be rest assured that people aren't going to throw 100 at your pictures taken. It's only happening when an actual photo is taken. So anyway, guys, hopefully that helps you. Please reach out, leave a comment, or reach out to me personally if you have any questions or need help with setters and getters. And until next time, guys, peace out.